Are we on? Hello, hello, hello. Waiting to connect. Am I connecting? Can anybody hear me? But. Let's hear it. Hi guys, hey, it's Mike Meyers. Here's where somebody types in, "We can hear you fine." And I stay in a panic until someone does that. Okay, there we go. Hey everybody, it's Mike Meyers. Welcome back. Hey, I hope you all had a good Memorial Day here in the States. We sure did. 3-day weekends, even with the coronavirus, can be handy. This is the Mike Meyers coronavirus live stream for the duration. The function of this live stream is to provide those of us who are isolated by coronavirus an opportunity to continue to practice and study for CompTIA exams, in particular CompTIA A+, Net+, Security+. We can go beyond that if you'd like, but that's really where our main practice is. General nerddom is always fun. The function of this is for you to ask me questions. That's why we call it an Ask Mike Anything. So the goal here is that you ask me questions and then I respond. So we watch the live chat very carefully. If you ask a question and I don't answer it, just ask it again. We're on every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 2 o'clock Central Daylight Time for 2 hours, or at least 2 hours, or until the questions are done. So as long as people are asking questions, we'll do a full 2 hours. If we have a light day, not a lot of questions, maybe it's only an hour. So keep that in mind as we progress through this stuff. We should have a code for a discount. I'm not going to say anything. I'm waiting for Scott Jernigan to confirm that. But for discount on practice questions and things like that, I'm going to let Scott type that in. We're waiting for information. Somebody said, "Oh, hi, Miss O'Shea." Oh, Miss O'Shea sent me. Hello, very fast. Tell Ms. O'Shea I said hello, will you? Okay, here we go. C. Plass and Mike, I've been trying to purchase your super bundle all weekend using your coupon code, was not able to. Okay, C. Plassman, Scott Jernigan is going to give you a email address, or even better, probably a phone number. The phone number here, let me see, Plaza, this is just for you, brother. Go ahead and just call that number. We do have people picking up, and if you're having some issues, please just give them a call and they will help you out. All right? Cool. All right. Sorry you're having trouble with that, dude. I personally can't. I don't know how any of this stuff works in terms of how the web servers and things like that all do all that stuff. We actually do quite a bit of that in-house. So nice part is we got guys like Michael Smyer around who have all the answers on that. So they will help you out. We got some new faces in here. That's good to see. All right. And let's go ahead. And I am going to start at the beginning here. My buddy Glenn Ruther, I have a meeting today at Showtime, jump in afterwards. Looking forward to reviewing the playback, okay? Looking for your thoughts on LLMNR and MDNS protocols in particular. Okay, so what Glenn's talking about is Link Local Multicast Naming Service, LLMNR, and then Multicast DNS, or MDNS. The problem is there was really nothing built into the internet that could handle device naming. Now sure, big DNS web servers and things like that, DNS work fine, individual hosts, but a lot of times, in particular for IoT devices or routers or things like that, it was kind of a problem to get these little devices. Do you want to even put a name on your camera? Do you want to put a name on your router and associate an IP address to it and have a DNS server and all that stuff? It was kind of a pain. And it was hard to find stuff. Like if I'm a little Windows 10 system, I want to see what's in my local area network. So Link Local Multicast Name Server, I'll let Scott double check that name, LLMNS, is a protocol that was designed to allow individual devices to multicast out using a special multicast address. I don't remember the multicast address, doesn't really matter. It starts with a 240, to go out and basically say, here's who I am. This was a lot cleaner than the old NetBIOS, NetBUI way. Back in the old days, and theoretically still today, if they don't have any other way, you take a bunch of Windows 10 systems, okay? Plain old Windows 10 systems, fire them up for the first time, plug them all in the same switch. They start broadcasting. And this broadcast can be a real pain. It can take, if you got like 10 little laptops, you got them all plugged in, you want them to all show up in network, it can take 45 minutes for them to all show up. All this broadcasting is an inefficient way of doing things. So LLMNS was developed, I won't say it was developed by Microsoft, but Microsoft liked it a lot as a way to be able to discover other stuff on your local area network without having to set up a DNS server or waiting for broadcasts or trying to configure every little Nest thermostat and camera and garage door opener to be able to respond properly to NetBUI broadcasts. Get the idea? So it's much more lower overhead, not much security though. Now, there's another way to do this called multicast DNS. It's just a separate protocol, very similar in many ways to link local multicast. Link local multicast, more as the name implies, is at a layer 2 kind of a method, whereas multicast DNS is actually pretty much like regular DNS just without a DNS server. So it's kind of cool like that. And what both of these multicast DNS is used by Apple, uses it a lot. I think their Bonjour service uses it. Yeah. Anyway, these services are great, and they make stuff appear, like if you got a Windows system, you can see your routers and your cameras and everything shows up in your network, thank goodness to these protocols. So that's good. The downside is that these protocols are never ever designed to get out on the internet, like ever. And sometimes people can do foolish things like opening up port forwards and stuff like that can expose these to the internet, and then it becomes bad because bad guys can then figure out what your stuff is, and that's not good. So there's two stories to this. One story is you can set up on your actual edge router and stuff access control list to block their port numbers 5353, and I can't remember the other one off the top of my head. That would be a good thing to do if you were concerned about that. But the other thing you can do that's much more powerful is turn them off. If I've got Windows systems and I don't have to support any Mac stuff, I turn off Bonjour. I can also turn off LLMNR. Now it might have to use other protocols to find stuff, or it may not find every camera in the house, but it'll work. I can still find things slowly, or I might have to query them directly by IP address. But it's not that important to me that, like I have cameras here in my house that support LLMNR, and I just turn it all off, and if I need to talk to the cameras, I'm the one who plugged in the IP addresses for those cameras. I know where they are. I don't want them showing up in my network places. I know I'm old, they don't say network places anymore, but they used to. I don't want them showing up. I'm going to query them through their own tools and whatever might be happening there. And so I just go into my network configuration and I turn stuff off. The nice part to this is that you can just turn them off and try it. Do you lose functionality as a result of that? If you don't, great, just leave them turned off. And remember what they're there for. They're just to help you find things on the network. So there's your answer, Glenn. And I did it right at the beginning because I know you couldn't be here to hear it. So hopefully that'll help. Okay, I want to make sure I got your question, Glenn. I'm sorry. I see them both as creating multicast domains similar to VLANs. It's a multicast over a WAN. Ooh, no, Glenn, bad tech, Glenn. No, none of these should never ever go over a WAN. They're LAN functions, and that's how they're supposed to be treated. Okay, what else we got here? Dave Stelly. Hey, David, I remember you. Of course I do. I have the answer for. Oh yeah, I remember because you had asked a question. I put it back in there. I would like to know more about managed switches if you can get to it. David, I can talk about. I could do a big thing, but as I asked you earlier, is there a particular question? I mean, you can ask me what is a managed switch, and I can take it from there. But let's make sure that that's the question you're actually answering. And David, I'll be more than glad to answer that for you right now. Dr. Quinn, good to see you again, sir. Who else is it? Marnix. Am I saying it right this time? Yes, good. Mike Meyers on one computer and installer on another. Let's get ready. It sounds like you're a busy guy. Devin Williams. I want to purchase your CompTIA A+. Are the videos up to date, and do they help in passing the test? Yes. So Devin, the best place to go is you can see we've got a discount on practice questions videos. Probably the best place if you want to buy our videos is I would recommend going to either lynda.com or udemy.com. We sell them here at Total Seminars with a little bit more of a premium. Yeah, no, CompTIA updates their exams every 3 years. So every 3 years I update the videos, and then every 3 years I update the videos, and they're good for the time period of that test. So one of the things that people get in trouble when they talk about CompTIA exams is they always talk about, well, is this the 2019 exam? Well, there's no year number associated with anything CompTIA does. Like, for example, the current CompTIA A+ exam is the 220-1001 and 220-1002. There's no year associated with it. Now, if you're just curious, when did this test come out? It came out at the end of 2018, so it's got about 2 years left on it. And then we'll do it again. So that's the idea behind that kind of stuff. So yeah, they will. They're good. I like them. Jimmy is here. My favorite Portuguese dude is here. Andre. Everybody's telling me I sound good. Thank you. Dominic Malo, what is your story? What is my story? Oof. Very fast. So, hey, very fast. I understand that Audrey, Ms. O'Shea, is giving you guys credit for showing up on my stuff, so you got to let me know how that works for you. Faria Lara, I am 40 years. Can I get in IT now? I do not have any IT experience. Sure, of course you can get in IT. Of course, my question to you, Faria, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, is why do you want to get in IT? Because if you tell me you can make money, then I'm going to say, go be a plumber. Honestly, plumbers make crazy good money. People get in IT because it's cool, because it is a passion, because it's something we love to do. And yeah, you can get into IT at almost any age. My oldest successful student who actually got a job and work was 68 years old. So. Joe, yeah, you passed the A+ 1001. Woohoo! Well done, brother. Dominic, are Udemy exams different than your Total Sem tester for PenTest? Are Udemy exams different? Yeah, they're different in that they're smaller. Udemy doesn't ask us to generate many questions. So that's kind of a Udemy thing, that they're like, here, well, give us questions. We're like, here, we got all these questions. Like, oh, we don't want that many. And I was like, okay, well, we got this big bank. We'll give you what you want. I do believe that if you're going to go for a certification, I mean, if you didn't buy videos, if you didn't buy books, if you didn't buy anything, buy practice questions. I mean, that's really the core to all this. And buy practice questions from companies that have really good reputations on generating good practice questions. Like, for example, I'm going to tell you right now, don't bother buying my questions if you think I'm going to give you all the answers to a CompTIA exam. I'm not. Won't happen. But I'm going to give you really good questions that are going to test your skill set. And if I give you a question that says 2 + 2 = 4, I assume that you're going to make sure you know that 2 + 3 = 5. Get what I mean? So I work very hard to match the look and feel, the tone, the timing, everything of the actual CompTIA exams. And I stand by with great pride the practice questions the Total Seminar sells. There's other great competitors out there as well. I'm not going to try to limit you just to me. Link local multicast name resolution. Thank you, Scott. Chased Crown. What were your scores on the 1001 and 1002? I'm assuming you're not asking me that because I don't remember. So Chase Crown, one of the things I will tell you about, nobody really cares what your scores are on the exams. Now, as a personal interest between us studiers, I could see where you'd ask a question like that. That's fine. But in general, when you go sit down for technical interviews and stuff, that certification, the only thing that the certification is going to do is it's going to put your name at the top of the stack. It's not going to give you a job, okay? And the interviewer is going to look at that and go, oh, they picked up CYSA or picked up A+, or whatever it might be. And actually, one of the things I tell people is that when you're in an interview, don't talk about your certifications, okay? Don't do that. Or you could say something, yeah, I picked up some certs. You know, keep it nonchalant. You know, yeah, I picked up some certs. It comes off really weird and a little bit stilted when somebody comes up and they hold a piece of paper up. They're like, yes, see, I have my A+ certification. It's just like, yeah, we know that, dude. Just don't do that, okay? Yeah, I got some certs. I keep up on things, you know, no big deal. And no one's going to ask you what your score is. Nobody cares. D for diploma. One of the biggest problems I have with McGraw-Hill when I'm writing books is that they'll have some weird, like right now I'm writing the new Security Plus book, and there's a couple of objectives. Well, there's one objective in particular, like a level 3 objective, that's just weird. And I know what's happened here is CompTIA tries to organize all this stuff by like 5 main domains and all this stuff, and they run out of organizational things, so they kind of just schlep it at the bottom of one of the domains. And I don't even want to talk about it. The chances, I'm not going to bring up what this topic is. I'm under an NDA, but it's not a very important topic. It's not an interesting topic. I'm not even sure why the topic's there. And I don't even want to talk about it. And in my purview, the right way to generate training materials, if there's certain objectives that are just complete, don't talk about them. Who cares? Oh, Mike, you might get a question. You know what? I would rather let you miss one question than go through like a big rigmarole to try to answer a particular objective. But I can't do that because, number one, McGraw-Hill yells at me and they're like, no, we have to have 100% coverage of all objectives. And then Scott Jernigan looks at me with this condescending eye and is like, well, Mike, you know, you are the boss if you don't want to cover it, you know. And then he starts to cry a little bit while he's drinking his swill, and then I cave in and I write about it anyway. But yeah, so. Fletcher, 4256. Hi, Mike. I have a question about subnetting and CIDR. Dude, you missed it all last week. When I look up tables on site or subnetting, some tables show 31 giving 2 hosts, and some show 0. Which is correct? The correct answer is going to be, let me make sure I'm not lying to you, on a WAC 31, yeah, that would be 0. The problem is on a WAC 31, you've only got one binary digit left, a 1 or a 0. And remember, a host address can't be all 0s or all 1s, even if it's just 1. So WAC 31 is not really super functional. C. Plasman, 2009. We'll get you a deal, dude. We'll get you a deal. Hang on, man. C. Plasman, send me an email. Because everybody's gonna get mad at me because I'm gonna give you the last week's deal because you actually tried to get it and you weren't successful. And I'm a big softy and I'm the president, so just send me an email, remind me, and we'll work it out. They're gonna get crabby because they actually have to go into the database and light that thing back up just for you, and everybody's gonna yell at me and pout, but it's because I love you so much. Dominic Mallow, I have the exams on Udemy. Should I also get them on Total Tester? I think I answered that question. You need practice questions, and I'm not trying to sell you. I mean, there's other people. Buy them from Transcender, makes some pretty good stuff. Professor Messer, I understand, makes some pretty good stuff. Not as good as mine, but they're good. They'll get you through the exam. Heck, if you really want to do it right, buy 2 different sets. I mean, the problem is when I'm writing practice questions, I have a voice, and a style that I try to avoid, but it still comes up. And a lot of times when you use one set of practice questions, you get used to that style of question. Then you go in and you take the real exam, and the style, it doesn't sound the same. There's some, and if you feel off, you feel confused. And the answer is just because the questions have different styling. That's it. And if you get two sets of practice questions from competitors, here I'm literally telling you to buy somebody else's stuff. When you get practice questions from a competitor, they have a different voice, a different style, and then when you start bouncing back and forth between these practice questions, you get that confusion, but you get it early during your practice, and you're like, okay, that's how I was to say that. No, he meant that. Okay, cool. And you don't get that on that first day when you sit down for the exams. So, something to consider. Vic Fars. My experience is old, trying to understand MPLS versus SD-WAN. Man, Vic, you guys missed such great stuff. We had a big thing on this last week. How do these change the job of network engineers? Do we need fewer junior network admins because of these new technologies? No, we probably need a lot more. You know, the thing about MPLS is that it's pretty static, right? I mean, you're basically leasing virtual lines is really what's coming out with that, and it's static. Whereas SD-WAN, which can work with MPLS, but it can work with almost anything, traditional broadband, you know, anything, and it has a lot more flexibility to it. So I feel like you're asking me two kinds of questions. MPLS versus SD-WAN. SD-WAN is not a competitor to MPLS. SD-WAN is a new way to look at this using software definition, which most certainly can include MPLS. Anybody who has an SD-WAN solution out there will be the first thing to tell you. They'll go, look, it works fine with MPLS too. So if you've already got an MPLS solution, we're there for you. What we're trying to do is take some of your backhaul off of you so that little office over here doesn't have to have this big leased line, in essence, in there. We can do something cheaper. You might be able to just use regular old broadband, you know, plug in a piece of fiber, and next thing you know, you've got enough to do whatever magic you need to do. I mean, that's what SD-WAN's all about. I mean, money-wise. How do these change the job of network engineers? They make it more, they give you a lot more flexibility in terms of how you can connect. You have to pay more attention to things like, you know, bandwidth and backhaul and stuff that, you know, back in the old days. I'm going to predate you, Vic. I mean, when we were putting in T3 lines, you know, you just had the bandwidth that the line provided, right? And that's all there was. With MPLS, you can have some control over bandwidth, depending on how much money you want to spend, how much latency you want, right? But once it's in, it's in. Once the T3 line was in, it was in. There was no more discussion. We're done. Okay? And then that's where things like QoS came from back in the old days, was trying to, how much can we fit in this cheap pipe? Or not cheap pipe. So there's a lot more flexibility. This is where the software definition can really come into play and provide support and tools. It's a fascinating world, especially cloud-based. Do we need fewer junior network admins? Not sure what you mean by junior, but we need more network people than ever. Guys, I got in on a phone call with some very, very, very high-level people just a couple of months ago, and the federal government is in panic at the low number of technicians we have. I mean, depending on whose numbers you talk to, it's like in 2019 we had a 21,000, don't quote me on the source, I don't remember where I read it, I read this stuff all day long, that we had a shortage of at least 21,000 experienced security techs, you know, I've never heard anybody talk about that we have too many in any way, shape, or form. I am unaware of any employers other than maybe mom and pops who are not hiring even amongst the coronavirus. It's tricky times with the virus, no doubt, but demand is unreal. Dominic, I love your additional teachers. Out of curiosity, why don't you teach all the classes yourself, Mike? Because I don't like to. I mean, I like to, but you know, honestly, some of the stuff, you know, Michael doing the PenTest Plus, he's in the middle of that stuff, you know, and I can talk about it, and I certainly know pen testers and hang with them, but you know, our goal is to get the best possible people we can for you to to present and give you the stuff that you need. So there ain't no pride here, man. If there's somebody better than me out there, I'm always glad to step aside and move forward, but not on A+ or Net+. Gino, don't talk about the space thing. I've actually got another screen running over here, and I've got a buddy of mine who's literally sitting in mission control right now. And if anything other than nominal happens, I'm going to get an instant text message from NASA, as much as she can tell me at least. Marnix, is there a reason to keep port 80 open at all? Well, which direction? Oh, because nobody uses port 80 anymore? I never thought about that. What would happen if you cut off outbound port 80? Most of the Windows stuff that phones home is all on 443 now. Geez, Mark, do me a favor. This is actually kind of an interesting thing. Would you do an experiment and block outgoing port 80? Or block it both ways if you want. It's blocked pretty much incoming anyway. Block outgoing port 80. Tell me how it goes. I'd be fascinated to hear how that works. What is the ETA on Security Plus simulations? I don't know the answer to that question. Yeah, so Dominic's saying, why block port 80? Because 443 is the secure one. To me, Dominic, the reason to block port 80 is the stuff that we're not thinking of. Does that make any sense? Most browsers have HTTPS everywhere kind of built into them now, or you might have the HTTPS everywhere add-on depending on what browser you use. But what makes me nervous is the stuff we don't think about, And does my NVIDIA driver updating tool, which goes outbound on port 80 without me asking, is that a good thing or a bad thing? So that's why I was asking Marnix to give it a try, because I'd be curious to see how it works. Managed switches and VPN. Jao, I've got a big presentation we're going to do on VPN and proxy servers here shortly. I keep forgetting we got 2 hours now. I don't have to rush things anymore. This is great. But you guys are going to have to be questions. If the only question you have is, what is a managed switch? I can at least start with that, but you're going to have to ask me a question. Dave's telling, anything you can explain is fine. Woof, okay. Trying to think if I have access to a managed switch here. I do, but that would mean I would have to remember what the IP address for it is, and I don't remember for the life of me. I have it documented somewhere upstairs. I guess we could talk about it. I can do, interpretive dance. We can talk about managed switches, sure. Yeah, Joe, that's a good, like Soho routers use HTTP for instance. But remember, Marnix isn't talking about blocking your ability to get to the router. He's talking about blocking outbound port 80. So you could still be able to get there even if you blocked it. Clark Zero, hey Mike, I've seen these websites, won't many specifically listing unsecured network cams. Some of these are just community cams or traffic cams. Some yes. Do these people know they're on the websites? No. Are there ways to protect this from happening? Yes. Are certain brands worse? Definitely. Okay, you want to talk about webcams for a minute? Let's talk about them. There have been a lot of foreign-made web cameras that are of questionable nature. And on the Security Plus simulations, I got some information from Scott Jernigan. They're in development. The virus has set us way back on that kind of stuff. That's not the stuff. Simulations are very difficult to do by yourself. And even with a highly connected company like Total Seminars, we've kind of, It's not on the back burner, but there is no rigid timetable at this minute because of the work from home. So we're on it, man. Promise, we're on it. Okay, so we're always talking about cameras. So my rule sets are pretty simple. I don't ever use any webcam that either phones home on its own, which is easy enough to track, just fire up a Wireshark. If it phones home on its own, or if it relies heavily on cloud servers. I know it's a pain in the rear end, but all the cameras I use personally, if there is anything that they try to phone home on, they're sending unsolicited outbound messages through my router, I stop that real fast. Or I'd prefer not to buy any that do that. And then the other thing is that anybody where you have to have a cloud account. There's a lot of people that say a cloud account's optional, that's fine. But when they say you must have a cloud account, and you gotta be careful because there's really cheap web cameras out there. And they're 1080p, and they're PTZ, and you know, they're got all this stuff. 48 bucks. It's like, wow, that's a great deal for a camera. You buy the camera, you plug it in, there's no internal storage, everything has to go up to a cloud and, you know, somewhere in China, and I'm not comfortable with that. And I think that that's a source of a lot of the leaks, where we're not actually looking directly at cameras, we're looking at cloud stuff, even if it's live cloud, and those things make me nervous. So try to stick with well-known brand names and be prepared to pay, you know, three figures, low three figures for even a most basic PTZ camera to have that level of security. Yeah, and Clark Zero, there's a lot of websites that do these unsecured webcams. Are certain brands worse? I get very, I gave you my example. I don't want to name brands. Professor Messenger doesn't have practice exams? I thought he did. Howie Bentovich. Hi Mike, why is A+ split up into two parts, and is it a good idea waiting a month in between exams? Howie, for years I always told people to take the exams, take them together, literally in the same sitting. You sit down, you take one, pass or fail, whatever, you get up, take a stretch, smoke a cigarette. Nobody smokes anymore, sorry. Drink some vitamin water. And then you go right back in and take the second exam. For decades, the two A+ exams had tremendous overlap, and it didn't make sense to treat them as separate exams. It is only with this latest exam, the 220-1001 and 220-1002, that they seem to have finally done a good job of really separating the knowledge base of each of those exams to the point where you can take them separately. As in terms of waiting a month, I wouldn't. You know, it really just depends on you. You know, you're in an A+ state of mind when you're studying and going for it. You know, maybe a month wouldn't be a bad idea. Yeah, it wouldn't be bad. How long did it take you to study for the first one? That might be a better criteria. Yeah. So there's half an answer for you, Howie. Yes, you can take them separated now. C. Plasman, seriously, I'm so thankful and flattered for your help. Flattered? Oh, go on. Vimal, there he is. Come on, Vimal, I gotta have one of your hard questions today, brother. Nancy Meadows. Nancy, my favorite Florida woman in the entire universe. Vic Fars, I have to Javier, can you please recommend us what are the best public and private VPNs? Oh, heck no. No, I'm not going to do that. We're going to talk about these products, and we'll make sure you guys understand what they are and how they're going to work. But I refuse to make any recommendations on that, mainly because I know what you guys do with them. Does the number of counties for computer tech also? Derek, I'm not sure what you're asking me, brother. Retype it and we'll try. I bought. You bought the Lego, the NASA Lego 50th anniversary. Did you get it from that website I turned you guys on to? Isn't that great stuff? You know what I want? I'm sure you guys are wondering to yourself, Mike's birthday is September 1st, and I don't know what to get him for his birthday. So what I want, what I really want, is like a really large scale, like Apollo lunar and command module, okay? Highly detailed, like really detailed, not some cheapy stuff. I'd even take a plastic model set, as long as it was big. You know, I don't want something like teeny thing, all right? So if you're wondering what to get me, that'd be one. You could also get me the SLS model, Saturn V, Saturn 3B, Gemini Atlas, Mercury, Redstone, any of those models, yeah. Everybody's like, yeah, right, Myers. Stand in line, buddy. I actually tried to find some models like that. I was trying to get high quality metal models. They're very, very expensive, like many, many hundreds of dollars. Chris Vincent. There's my Steam account right there, brother. So, Jai, you're going to do 6 weeks for the 1,002? All right, sounds good. Which webcam do you recommend for those of us on a budget? What am I buying these days? Logitech. That's what you're looking at me on right now. Logitech CW900. The problem is right now, web cameras, microphones, lights are all still on a real premium because of the virus. So, to me, these are on a budget. CW, are you familiar with Ubiquiti products? I am familiar with them in that I have set them up a few times, but I'm blessed to have really smart guys who work for me, like Michael Smyer and Dave Rush, who do such a better job configuring them than me. So I could talk about them from a managerial standpoint, and if I really had to, I can configure them. This is always the tough part. When we get new toys, I want to play with them too, but I want the guys to play with them. So my rule basically is, I don't want you guys setting up anything cool without me. But I usually let them drive, and so I tend to miss some stuff. But I am certainly familiar. Total Seminars uses lots of Ubiquiti products. Glenn, you made it. I had your answer, brother, right at the very beginning. Gena Hiring, thank you for your work. It's helped tremendously. That's what I'm here for, man. I'm here for you. Michael McGinnis, hello, Mike. I love your courses. Thank you. As someone new to the IT, once I had the A+ with a GAD, another experience. What's a good job to look for to start out, in your opinion? Well, get the GED first and foremost, Michael. And then go look for work. I mean, you'd be shocked what people, you know, entry-level sales jobs are great. Entry-level bench tech stuff. Best Buy is a great hirer of entry-level people. They won't claim they are, but they are. What they're looking for is good technical interviews and a good work ethic. And, you know, it blows me away. And I hate to get personal here, but why do techs have such a problem with hygiene? Okay? If you heard the stories that I get from hiring managers and HR people about some of the, no offense, but methane breather people who come in, you know, they come in and they still got tags on their shirt, and, you know, they button wrong, and they haven't seen a comb since, you know, 2014. It gets to be a problem because a lot of times, and I always get nervous about this, when I run into people and they're like, I can't get a job no matter what happens, I keep trying, can't get a job. And what I want to do is, let's have a video conference. But I can't do that. I can't do that. But yet, Michael, you don't wait for your A+ to get a job. Just go work. Get into IT. There's a bazillion entry-level positions. You know, just get out there. And by the way, Michael, I don't know who you are. I can't challenge your hygiene. I was just thinking about that, and it got me. It was like, go get a job. There's always a place to work. Dave Rush, if we get that lunar module for you at the Christmas exchange, does that ensure another year of employment? Well, no, but Dave, if you get me an authentic Mercury astronaut pressure suit, then you've got a whole year of nothing to worry about. How about a big old bag of chocolate? No chocolate for me, man. Guard Burgess, planning to take the second test in 3 weeks. Good man. Can send you a fruit basket? No, Geraldine. Hey, Geraldine's here. Hey, Geraldine. Yeah, no fruit baskets. No, I don't need anything. I'm good. See, the funny thing is people are always asking me, well, Mike, what do you want for your Christmas? What do you want for your birthday? What do you want for St. Patrick's Day or whatever it is? And for me, it's like, I don't want things. No offense, guys. I can go buy that lunar module, command module set myself. What I need are actions. I just need actions. Can somebody come over here and wash my car? I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's so hard for me, especially these days, to get my, usually I wash my car myself or even take it out. Let's just wash my car. My poor car's so dirty. What would be the best way to create a home lab for A+, Net+, and SR virtual or physical? Okay, Carlos, Carlos Libla, that's a good question. So for A+, you don't need much. Most of the A+ could be covered pretty easily with a Windows 10 laptop and probably an Android phone. Those would be the two pieces that would, and you wouldn't have to really mess with them. You wouldn't have to put a screwdriver to them. It would just be practicing, how to get to Device Manager, having some understanding how to change IP addresses, things like that, both on the phone and on the laptop. Yeah, I know, but the other thing, if I were going to add to it, if I could have some kind of desktop system, you could maybe even do it on a laptop that had a lot of RAM, The reason I want a lot of RAM is because there are some pretty good Linux questions, and there are questions on virtual machines. So if you've got a PC that's got 16 gig would be optimal. You might be able to squeeze by on 8, but I doubt it. If you had 16 gigabytes of RAM, you can easily go get a copy of the free Oracle VirtualBox, which is a wonderful hypervisor, install it on a Windows system, and then go get like a Ubuntu Linux ISO, download that for free, and you're literally learning about virtual machines and teaching yourself about Linux all at the exact same time. And so we haven't really even looked at screwdrivers or anything yet. No offense, guys, but probably the easiest part to any computer is the physical assembly. I mean, everything's keyed. It's kind of hard to mess stuff up. What I mess up on my systems more than anything else is the cables, because I'm a pig. I really am. I'm a slob. My cables get all messed up. Drives poor Scott Jernigan crazy because he's always so neat and everything's pretty and cable ties and all that stuff. So, but the actual physical stuff it's not that hard. There's a lot of recognition. I mean, that might be an issue. Making sure you know what a SATA connection looks like. But yeah, in terms of actual system, I mean, you might want to pick up an older system or something. You shouldn't have to pay for an older system. Craigslist or other things like that where people are, throwing this stuff away. Non-functional stuff. Hey, the RAM snaps in and out. You can play with the CPUs. Just get a handle for that. Find an old dead laptop and take the monitor physically off and see like the Wi-Fi antenna, they're always in there, and the CCFLs for the lighting, that kind of a thing. That would be the big thing. You probably want to get a better home router. if I was going to say the one big physical hardware expense you might run into, because it's not so much for A+, but for Net Plus and Security Plus, would be a better home router, which is probably going to be talking in the 200 plus range. The other thing you got to do is find buddies, and connect, especially if you're in a class, find other students and stuff like that, pool resources. You don't have to do this alone. That's craziness. That'd be the only other big thing. So router, maybe a little managed switch. Who sells? There's a lot of inexpensive sub-$100 managed switches out there. They may only go to like gigabyte Ethernet, but who cares? You're just using it for practice. Hitting the mom and pop stores. All these mom and pop computer stores have big piles of trash. And again, especially for part recognition and things like that, or just playing with some CPUs, they don't have to work. I call them ooh-ahs. It's just non-functional hardware that I can look at and go, ooh, ah. And so that would be another thing that I would consider looking at. Yeah, be about it. Nancy Meadows, Nancy, I'm sorry, I can't talk about C-band today because there's some stuff going on that I don't understand, and I did see your email from it, Nancy. I'm so sorry. I promise I will have a discussion on C-band on Friday. Let me write that down so I know I'm not a liar. Nancy Meadows, this is just for you. C-band on Friday. Now keep in mind, Nancy, that C-band is not on any of the CompTIA exams, but it is kind of a cool topic, so I'm going to go ahead and let you get away with it. Here's Scott helping out with some C-band. Yeah, Scott, I'm going to save the C-band. Nancy's a personal friend of mine, and it's a fascinating topic, by the way. Nancy, I do want to talk about it, but been working on VPN and proxies so much, and I took Monday off because it was Memorial Day, and I'm not ready to talk about it. Thomas Dranko, yes, I'm going to talk about VLANs today. Oh, no, I'm not going to talk about VLANs, but I'll tell you what, since we had questions about managed switches, we can talk about VLANs. Let's see how things go today, because I definitely have a pretty big presentation, and we're almost an hour into the first hour already. But if we have some time, I'll throw it out. And if I can't, I guarantee you, okay, Scott Jernigan, here's the second thing to hold me to, is let's have a discussion about VLANs on Friday. I mean, that's pretty easy. VLANs are not complicated, folks. Because that might be fun. I'm going to have to rewire things around here a little bit, but you know what? Let's save managed switches and VLANs for Friday, because I'll have to rewire around in here, because right now I'm running through some Soho routers, and just unplugging it will take me off and the live stream will end. But I do have some managed switches here at the house, and we can have some fun. We'll do some VLANs. Promise. Okay, good, good, good. VLANs, managed switches / VLANs on Friday, and a little C-band for my buddy Nancy Meadows. Okay. Mike, is there a particular SIEM tool that I should learn for Security Plus? Jesse C. No, not at all. At this point in time, CompTIA doesn't even really touch it. We don't have one SIEM tool that we use. I'm going to see, Scott Jernigan, is Michael Smyer pushing anything in that department? But no, the questions are at 10,000 feet, and it would be overkill for you to go that far down, although it could be fascinating. Giles Sosa, I have a question. I have a bunch of leftovers of old computers, old IDE, HDD. Is it trash, or it's not worth anything at all? But you should do like all nerds do. You should start your CPU collection now, right? So I always pull the CPUs. I always pull the RAM. You know. I don't know why. but I got just about every CPU ever made. I got Intel 4004s and Zilog 8080s, all the way up to what am I putting in the trash these days? First generation and some second generation i7s are now going into the stack. Yeah. On my Net Plus exam, I didn't have any questions concerning what fiber connectors look like. Gino, their objectives on the exam. Keep in mind that when you take the exam, you're only getting a small subset of the pile of questions that are in there. So if you're getting 90 questions on Net Plus, I guarantee the test bank that CompTIA generates for Net Plus is at least 600 questions. So you're just getting a subset of whatever they're going to give you. Gene Rother, it seems to be quite a significant lag here. So Glenn, if you notice that there was a lag, then that means you can see how I'm talking. There's about a 10-second lag, and always is, between what I'm saying right now and then what you're hearing. Is that what you're asking, Glenn? I'm not sure if I'm answering the question. Carlos Lobo, I have been watching A+ and Net Plus videos on LinkedIn Learning. Great place. It's great. Thank you. Thank you, man. Marnix, hey Mike, practical question. I have a laptop with Linux installed, but it doesn't boot from the hard drive, but instead goes to PXE. Honestly, Marnix, unless there's something really critical on there, I would just reinstall, honestly, instead of going in there. Glenn, what did I say about MDNS and LMMNR? I said basically turn them off if you can, and if you can't, have the router block it. But I said more than that. Are you ever going to wear your iconic hat on these AMAs? Tolowit, the whole reason I'm here is because there's this virus going around, and my iconic hats, plural, are all down in the office, and I don't want to go down there. That's how yeah. Sorry, man. Jenna Griffin Briley. Hi. Marnix, how do you get it to boot from the hard drive? Dude, you're going to have to go through. I'm guessing if it's going to PXE, it's nothing wrong with your Linux installation. I'll bet you're going to need to go into your BIOS and double check your boot order and make sure it's booting to the hard drive first and not trying to do a network boot. That would be the first thing I would do. Russ Morgan, does a VPN specifically using a WAN mini port SSTP with CHAP version 2 use a minimum but variable amount of bandwidth or a fixed amount? Wow. That's a cool question, Russ. So WAN mini ports, so we're talking about Windows, and you're using a CHAP. I don't feel that the VPN defines the bandwidth. Your connection defines the bandwidth. Now the VPN can define the latency, but not necessarily the bandwidth, so I would say fixed amount. Feel free to challenge me on that. SSMSA, hi Mike, I find proxies quite hard. Any advice, explanation would be great. No problem, SS, we're here in just a few minutes. I'm going to do a presentation on proxies versus VPNs. Oh, I'm sorry, Glenn, I'm not on the uptake. Thank you, brother, I understand now. Gus Alvarez, hey Gus, looking good, Mike, looking good. What was that from Trading Places? Yeah, Marnix, just reinstall it. Unless there's something precious in there, just reinstall it. Okay. All right, looks like we're on a temporary low. I can still answer more questions, but what I want to do right now is let's go ahead and talk about handling, understanding the difference between proxies versus VPNs, and more complicated, why is there such a thing called a VPN proxy, which is really what we're leading to. Okay, and by Scott Jernigan agrees with me, Russ, on fixed amount on that. All right, so let's talk about VPNs. Well, we're going to talk about proxy servers and VPNs, and then we're going to put them all together. Understand that right now there is a lot of confusion on them, so I'm going to be looking at this from a very classical standpoint. Sorry, I am dehydrated. And so I'm going to be looking at it from a very classical standpoint, and then so it's a little bit of a history lesson, not too much though, and then we'll understand where we're coming from. So let's go ahead and get this started. And I've got a little PowerPoint just for you guys. Let me make sure it comes up. Nink, yay. All right, so let's take a look at proxy and VPNs. Okay, so what I've got set up here is a little tiny network, and on the far left there is a little system, and he wants to go over to this website.com. Yes, Scott Jernigan, I checked all these URLs to make sure there wasn't anything untoward. So all he wants to do is get over this website, all right? And he wants to get over there via, you know, HTTPS, HTTP, whatever, who cares? And that's great, but what a lot of people will do is they will install what's called a forward proxy server. Now you got to be careful with terminology here. People are notorious about just saying proxy server. There is no such thing as just a proxy server. There's forward proxy servers. There's reverse proxy servers. There's open proxy servers. But to say the word proxy server by itself is pretty much meaningless. However, if you challenge people on it, you'll be technically correct, but you'll have no friends. So you kind of got to figure out what they're talking about. Let's get back into this. All right. Now, what this forward proxy server is going to do is it's going to take all of the outgoing requests and it's going to go through the proxy server, and then the proxy server actually talks to the websites. So this forward proxy has some good things about it. First of all, it works at the application layer, so you need to tell your applications to use it. You know, wait a minute. Proxy servers can work with any application. They can work with the web, they can work with FTP, they can work with anything. But the reality of the situation is the web is so predominant that when you talk about proxy servers, what you're really talking about is the web. So HTTP to some extent, but mainly HTTPS. So it's really a web tool, even though proxy server is not limited to a web. That's the only thing we really use it for. So what it does is it hides the target server from the client that's trying to access it. So we block outgoing ports on the firewall unless it comes from the proxy. Think about this for a minute. What the first thing you're going to do when you set up a forward proxy server in your office or in your school or whatever it is you go to the router and you block all outgoing port 80, all outgoing port 443 on the router. There is no outgoing web stuff unless it comes through the proxy server. So you set up an ACL to do that. Got it? Good. Because if I'm going to go through all the trouble of setting up this thing called a forward proxy server, and if people think they can ignore it, just go straight to this router like they normally would, none of this is going to work. Don't worry, I'm going to show you how all this works. So why would we use a forward proxy? Well, number one, filtering. We don't want you kids going to places you're not supposed to be going. Caching, it speeds things up. We can actually, like if there's a website that everybody's hitting at the school a lot, we can preload images and things like that, store it in the proxy server itself, and also for logging. So we can keep track of where you wacky kids are going with our tools, so we can keep track of you and make sure you're not doing anything you're not supposed to be doing. So these forward proxies are popular anywhere people want to control what you're doing. Just about every school on earth has a proxy server, governments, corporate, you know, anything like that. So, hey, Mike, let's show them how to do it. Okay, I'll show you. So to make a proxy server work, the first thing I'm going to have is some kind of proxy server. Now, proxy servers manifest in a lot of ways. You can buy a box, an appliance that sits in a rack. Companies like Barracuda make tons of money with their proxy servers. Hardware proxy servers are very fast compared to that. Or you can just install a piece of software on a computer and make that computer the designated proxy server. And I've got one you can take a look at here. This guy is old and ancient, but it works. This is a tool called Free Proxy. It's been around like forever. Okay. Just trying to make this just a little bit bigger so you guys can see this. All right, there we go. So this is called Free Proxy. It's a free tool. And let me just show you some of the stuff that you would see in here that would be pretty common. So first of all, we would set up the proxy itself. So this proxy set up that it only takes incoming port 8080. So we're going to have to set up our web browsers. Now remember, everything else is going to be blocked. In fact, we're going to go ahead and block port 8080 even on the router. So we are going to have to go into our web browsers, and trust me, there's a place in every web browser to do this. And you say, look, I'm using a proxy server, and it's going to have this IP address, and it's expecting data to come in on this particular port number. A lot of proxy servers, they'll just take incoming port 80, port 443, that's fine. This particular one wants to change it. We could change it to anything we wanted, but that's what it says, so we're going to leave it like that for now. So HTTP proxy, does it have an HTTPS proxy? Yeah, that's how old this guy is. It doesn't even have an HTTPS proxy in there. I know this is an old tool. You're like, Mike, you're trying to show us proxy server and it doesn't even have a secure HTTP proxy server option in it. Yeah, I know. It's just a tool. To be honest with you guys, for an instructional standpoint, I like using Windows stuff, but this thing's ancient. So it's good to be teaching like in a class, but I would never use this in the real world. There's wonderful Linux-based solutions where I could just, slap up a Linux box and handle all this for me. All right, let's get back in it. So we can say, where it's connecting to. You can have like this, use a proxy server. Proxy servers have proxy servers sometimes. A log file, so I can keep track of all the stuff you people are doing, who's connecting and when, and all those kinds of things. I don't think there's anything very interesting in options. Most of the options here are just for setting up an authentication. So you can actually, they'll force people to log into the proxy server. You can have users and passwords, that kind of thing. Not used very often. And there's a lot of information. These log files can be massive. So there's a lot of ways, how do you store the log file? How big can it be? Do you want a circular file? All that kind of stuff. And we can set up users. We can configure caching, which is a very popular thing to do with forward proxies. So we can turn on the cache. We can say, where do we want the cache to be stored? How big do we want the caches to be? Because it could end up filling a hard drive if you're not careful. Stuff like that. So that's a very simple but true forward proxy server. And in this case, it's just running a little bit of software on this individual system. I need to warn you right now that if you were to try to use something like this, even if it had HTTPS in it, if you were to try to run this as a real world proxy server, everybody in the office would hate your guts in like 5 minutes because it's not really designed to handle a whole lot of people. All right, we'd end up looking for hardware-based solutions instead. But anyway, so we get the idea. So we've got some proxy servers set up. Now this proxy server is going to have an IP address, and it's going to be expecting stuff to come in on a certain port. That port 8080 is weird, so we'll pretend like we just set it to 80. So what I want to do now is I want to turn this around, and this time what we're going to do is we're going to go into I always get paranoid. Just make sure we're all still talking. No, Garda, the HTTP authentication is not HTTPS in this particular one. No, sorry, not. Okay, hang on. So where do I want to go? Oh, okay. So probably the first place to go, I'm going to get us halfway there before I show you. Internet connection, it's going to be in the control panel. least one thing you guys know for sure, I don't rehearse this stuff very much. Okay, so here we are in the control panel. And it should be Internet Options. Okay, there we go. See it? Internet Options. This option has been around like since Internet Explorer was your only choice in things. So we go to Internet Options, and it's connections, yeah. And then down here at the bottom it says LAN settings. And there it is. I'm assuming you guys can read this, or it says proxy server. And we set up the address of the proxy server, whatever I decided it was. And then whatever the port is. Now remember, if our proxy server only took 8080, we'd type in an 8080 there. Notice there's another option that says bypass proxy server for local addresses. What it's saying is, if you just, like, say somebody else in your local area network has a web page open for some reason, you can go straight to that without having to go through the proxy server. That's all that means. Okay, and then under advanced, you can see proxy actually works with a lot of stuff. Here's regular HTTP, here's HTTPS, here's FTP, old sockets. This is old stuff from a million years ago, okay? But you can actually go in and you can set these up individually, that kind of a thing. Or you can just use the same number for all of them and then count on the proxy server to be able to handle the difference. And you can also put exceptions in if you want. I'm going to cancel that because I don't want to run this right now. So now you've set up your ability to get to the proxy server. Again, folks, one of the first things you do when you set up a proxy server is you block the router in such a way that it will not accept any outgoing port 80 or port 43 unless it comes from the proxy server itself. So if people don't want to configure their web browser, well, hey, guess what? They're not getting on the internet. So, or what if people are smart and think, I'm going to turn all this off? Well, you're not getting out on the internet. So that's what makes these types of proxy server works, is because you, as a tech, block them. Now, the other thing to keep in mind here is that most people don't go into their internet options. In fact, you can set up security policies in Windows where this is all pre-configured, and if anybody comes into their internet options, it's just going to be grayed out. They can't touch anything. So there's all kinds of security here. So don't be clever in your head, because that's what people do here. So you sit there, well, Mike, that's great for Internet Explorer, but I use Firefox. First of all, pretty much all web browsers in a Windows environment will defer to whatever settings you set in Internet Options. If you're using Chrome, using anything else, whatever you set in that Internet Options off your control panel, they'll honor. But all web browsers also have their own settings on that, so I'm going to light up Firefox here. All right, let's see if this works. Okay. All right, so here's me. I've just got a tab open. Yeah, I'm watching the NASA thing too. All right, so as we go in here, you know, every web browser is different. So, oh boy, I can't believe I did this. Options? Is it under General in Firefox? I never remember where this stuff is. Please be here. Don't embarrass me in front of my friends. Networks. Thank you, God. Okay, here we go. All right, here, perfect. Okay, so here in Firefox, so you can see one of them says use system proxy settings, which means just use whatever we had just set in our internet options, or we could set them up manually here. But again, if people want to jack with this, the only thing they're going to do is not get to the internet, because we've got that all blocked so beautifully on the router itself. Okay, so what you're looking at here is a forward proxy server. Forward proxy servers, every school in the world probably has a forward proxy server set up, and for good reason, because you know, teachers get fired because they accidentally go to a porn site and things like that. And, you know, you want to see paranoia, go to any high school in the United States when it comes to that kind of stuff. So that is a traditional forward proxy. So let's spin that around, and now let's talk about reverse proxies. So in this case, what I've got here is I've got my little network here, and I want to go over to a web server on www.totalsem.com, okay? Now, the problem is all of a sudden it's become real popular and everybody wants to come to www.totalsem.com. So I start doing cool things like I can set up a bunch of web servers. So I can set up 3 or 4 or 5 web servers, whatever it might be. But the problem is how do you organize them? So what we do is we set up what we call a reverse proxy server. Now, I'm showing this on the edge of the cloud. But most of the time, a reverse proxy server is going to be physically with the actual servers themselves. There's no law of physics that requires that, and of course the cloud changes everything. But in a traditional reverse proxy, you've got 3 or 4 web servers that are all serving up the exact same website, okay? And they're all updating each other behind the scenes on their own back end. And we put this box in front of the 3, and this proxy kind of acts as the conductor to use all 3 of these at once. So that way, when people want to talk to them, well, yeah, that's right. So the reverse proxy server usually takes the URL itself. So the individual web servers in the background end up not actually being www.totalsem.com. They'll have some internal DNS name, but nobody on the outside world would ever see that. And then anytime anybody wants to talk, they talk to the proxy server, and then the proxy server sends it out. So the reason we use reverse proxies is, well, first of all, they work at the application layer. You must access the reverse proxy server to use the target servers. Now the thing is, you don't even know you're accessing a proxy server. You just go into www.totalsem.com, but you're really hitting a proxy server. And he'll act as the boss. So it hides the client from the target server that the client hides the client from the target server that the client is trying to access. So it's exactly the reverse of what we just saw. So why do we use a reverse proxy? Number one, for load balancing. So the reverse proxy, the proxy server can look at the individual machines and send out requests on a round robin basis or by load or something like that. Secondly, it's really good for security. You guys have probably, I think I've got an example coming up here for denial of service attacks. It can look for malformed packets. It can do all kinds of stuff that the actual servers themselves shouldn't have to be dealing with. So it does a lot of good stuff. And for caching. Caching information that you don't have to keep going to the servers for. And I didn't put this in here, but another one that it does is kind of important, is it does encryption. So on a lot of these boxes, these proxy servers, they handle all the TLS or SSL encryption decryption of the actual HTTPS screen. So they do all that decryption so the individual servers don't have to deal with it. Kind of cool, huh? And these are popular anywhere people want to control what you're doing to their web servers. And I'll bet all of you have seen this type of thing before. This is a classic example of a reverse proxy doing its thing. It's checking you out, making sure that you're not sending evil stuff to his precious web servers. All right. So now we have classic forward proxy. Now you know what a classic reverse proxy is. And now we're going to get to the part that's more interesting to you guys, and that is another kind of proxy. So in this particular example, so here I am on my little network, and I'm a Canadian, okay? And I want to go to hbogo.com, and I want to watch shows because my buddy in the US gave me his login or something evil that I want to hear about from you guys, okay? The problem though is that you try to do that, HBO Go is only supported in the US, certain US territories. They know what your IP addresses are. They know those IP addresses where they're issued from, or at least the router you're going through. So they're not going to let you in, Mr. Canadian. So this gets frustrating. So one of the things you can do is you can go to a reverse proxy server. I hate the word. You're going to see this word when you go out in the world to look for these things, but they're not really a reverse proxy server. What they really are is an open proxy server. An open proxy server will handle both the client side and the server side and make everybody invisible to everybody else. if they actually want to send that kind of information, it's actually tricky to do. They're called transparent proxy servers, but they're rare and weird, and I don't want to talk about them, and you're never going to see them on any CompTIA exams. Okay. So with this open proxy server, now we're going to pick, because we're Canadians, we want to watch an American television show, we're going to pick an open proxy server that's based out of the United States. There's nothing in that proxy server that keeps you from talking to him, Mr. Canadian. So you can talk to him, and all of a sudden, because the client is transparent to the server and the server is transparent to the client, the server goes, oh, you're in the United States, give me your username and password and we can watch, oh, I don't name a show that's on HBO Go these days. I can't think of one off the top of my head. Anyway, so you get the idea? Cool. So an open proxy, it hides the target server from the client, and it hides each from each other. So everybody's hidden from everybody. Why would you use an open proxy? Because you want to avoid filtering. Here, I'll say the nice words. You want to avoid filtering, or you want to avoid censorship. Or really what you want to do is you want to break laws, or at least policies. And that's where you can get into a little bit of trouble. The problem is traditional open proxy servers are notorious for malware, and they're easily blocked and tracked. So what we want to do here is let's try this again. So watch this. So here's my American proxy server that I traditionally go to. But if I want to, there are companies who have proxy servers all over the world. In fact, they'll probably have 30 US servers, 22 UK servers. China, there's actually none in China because they're all very illegal there. And that's Uganda in the corner, in case you didn't know. And they'll do crazy stuff like even bounce between each other so that it becomes very, very hard to figure out where the original source came from. So even if a bad guy or law enforcement or somebody else wants to track it, it becomes very, very tricky because you go through a mesh of these guys. Open proxies have been around for a long time. You don't need any software. What you do is with an open proxy, you usually go to an open proxy website and you log in. And after you log in, you kind of get a window within a window and you just go to town. Proxies can manifest as add-ons. See that a lot? Open proxies can manifest as specialty web servers. Especially web browsers. You can install a special web browser that's designed to handle this kind of stuff. And they do work. I mean, if you're looking for anonymity, they do a good job, but they have a lot of shortcomings that I want to talk about. So the problem with proxies, number one, is they're totally insecure. There's no security built into proxy servers. Anyone can intercept the session between any two nodes, even if the data is encoded. Like, for example, you're passing an HTTPS stream. People know what it is. I mean, they can look into the stream and figure out that this is HTTPS. And the other problem we run into is that banners and advertisements on a secure page may not be encrypted. This is still a big problem. So, and then individual apps might be phoning home. Whoops. I jumped ahead a little bit. And particularly for law enforcement, this has always been a thing. They never worried about proxies, or you could jump through all the different things you wanted, especially back in the days of Java and stuff like that, bad banner ads and, cross-site cookies, things like that. The cops, they didn't care they could just figure out who you are, because these things would go all the way back or would make a direct connection and skip the entire proxy and just go back and start talking to your machine. Not good, okay? So the challenge we run into is that proxies did provide anonymity, but they didn't have any encryption. So let's hold on to the proxies for a minute. Now let's switch gears and talk about VPNs. Now, we've done a big thing on VPN already, so I don't want to go into a ton of detail here. Okay. So here's my little laptop. I'm in Denver Airport, and I want to actually, and this is my IP address that I got from the wireless there at the Denver Airport, okay? And this is the IP address of the WAN side of my router back at home. And all I want to do right now is I want to access a shared file on one of the desktops that are inside my network. Now you got to be careful here. I want to be on my network as though I were literally at my desktop in the office. I want to have a 192.168.55 IP address. I want to be able to access shared printers. I want to do everything as though I were at the actual network myself. I don't want a remote desktop. I don't want a secure shell. I want to be a part of that network, even though I'm in the Denver airport 1,000 miles away. And that's what VPNs do. Back in the old days, if you were far away from your network, you would have to rent a line. You would literally rent a T1 line at 5 figures per month to be able to connect remotely. And you're basically making your own private internet when you're doing stuff like that. So the whole idea of VPN was pretty simple. It goes, look, we're all connected through this internet thing anyway. Why don't we just make a virtual private network, ergo VPN, by using public internet lines? Get the idea? That's what VPNs are all about. Let's keep going. So the first thing that's going to happen is that I need a VPN endpoint. So in this case, I have a VPN capable router. And so this router is set up and capable of being a VPN endpoint. Inside this router, we can set up the type of VPN we want. It'll have names like PPTP or SSH or IPsec or OpenVPN. There's all kinds of different names in there, different standards. Some are better, some are worse. And then on the client machines, we're going to have to install, we're going to have to install some kind of VPN client. Now keep in mind, most operating systems come with a built-in VPN client, or we can install a third-party one. Who cares? What you do on your individual clients depends on how you set up your endpoint back at the house. So the VPN client, so he knows the he has to know the IP address of this router. So somewhere in there he knows that IP address. He might have it through dynamic DNS. It might be hard-coded into the client. Who knows? But he's got that. And then for authentication and authorization, there's going to be at least a username and password. But keep in mind, some VPNs can use certificates, they can use RSA keys, they can do all kinds of stuff, but we're going to keep it simple and just say username and password. So the VPN himself dials in to the endpoint, and he creates what we call a tunnel. Now, I hate the word tunnel because it doesn't really describe anything. What really happens is that you end up getting these crazy looking packets. Look at this packet. This is a typical VPN packet. So this is the internet address stuff here. Do you see that? But then there's a second set of IP addresses, which are the local addresses. So basically what happens is something comes from the client. It's not a tunnel. It's like it's a packet in a packet. How's that? And it uses those first two addresses to get to the endpoint of the router, right? The router strips those two off, and because he's VPN capable, he then looks at those next two addresses, and he just sends it down the line. That's what VPN's all about. So I think the next thing is going to be having me show you. Okay, so let me show you how to do this. Ooh, I have many screens open. I'm just logging into my router real quick. Okay, we're in. All right, so here we are all logged into the router. And this router is VPN capable. Most of them are these days. There's a VPN option right there. Cool. So I'm going to select this VPN option. So when I select this, it gives me a number of options. So this particular router supports 3 different types of VPN. A very old one called point-to-point tunneling protocol, or PPTP. A very advanced pain in the rear end called IPsec, which works great, but I think it's overkill. And then another one called OpenVPN. So I'm going to do the most simple one called PPTP. So we're going to turn it on. and it makes a whole bunch of stuff set up for us auto-magically, which is fine. So the only thing I pretty much need to do is make some usernames. So in this particular case, I have preset up a user called Mike with a password of total. So at this point, you're like, wait a minute. What's the difference between PPTP versus IPsec versus OpenVPN? PPTP is old and insecure, although to be honest with you, for quick and dirty VPNs that don't stay up all the time, I'm not afraid to use them because they're not that easily cracked. There is a contemporary of PPTP called L2TP. These are Network Plus questions for the record, folks. And both of those are pretty insecure. We don't use those anymore, even though I've got a brand new 802.11ax router that has PPTP in it. Isn't that fascinating? IPsec is a IP security, which is a standard that covers a lot of stuff. IPsec was designed for point-to-point encryption, layer 3 encryption of the entire internet. Never happened, but boy does it make a pretty secure VPN. And then OpenVPN is a free and open, it uses SSH, SSL? SSL as the primary encryption methodology, and it's considered by many people the gold standard for freeware open VPNs. Freeware VPN works great. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is oh boy. I'm going to try to set up a client, or at least go through the hoops. So let's see if we can make this work. So on the client side, I've just set up my network and internet through system. And there's a VPN option right here. Allow VPN over metered networks, allow VPN while roaming, sure. Change adapter options? Nope, not going to be there. Well, since I'm done it. Right here, add a VPN connection. So the VPN provider is going to be Windows. Connection name is Mike's PPTP to home router. Server name or address. Now, in this case, I would have to type in the actual IP of the WAN side of the router. VPN type. So you can see there's a few of these more interesting ones in here. We're doing point-to-point. So we want a username and password, smart card, one-time password, certificate. You have username and password. Username is Mike. Password is going to be total, T-O-T. That's interesting, T-O-T-A-L. Okay, and I'll save that. Save it harder. Windows is very interesting about setting up within its built-in client, is that these actually manifest as another network card. Let me show you. There it is. Where'd it go? There we go. So you can see I've actually set this up. Now the problem is right now, folks, is that if I even try to connect to it, I could knock down the entire live stream, so I'm not going to do that. But you can see setting up a classic VPN is actually fairly trivial. It's not that hard at all. In fact, you can even see VPNs in some situations where you have two endpoint routers that kind of set up a permanent tunnel. VPNs are slow. You need to be careful about that kind of stuff. That's the basic setup of most Soho type VPNs look like that. Pretty easy, huh? All right. So this is the big question. So what is a VPN proxy? A VPN proxy is nothing more than a combination of a VPN and a proxy solution to put it all together. Imagine it. In fact, a lot of people, they say, is it a VPN proxy or a proxy VPN? Nobody knows. Either way works fine. So when you talk about certain VPN solutions, like NordVPN is a real popular one, It's not a VPN. It's a proxy server that has VPN capabilities. Or you'll see somebody talk about, here's this popular open proxy server, but it has encryption. No, it's a proxy server with a VPN. Then they're all built into each other. And you almost always, and I'm going to restate that, you're always going to have to install some kind of third-party client on your system. With open proxies, you usually just go to a website and then you can do whatever you want to do. That's not the case with a lot of these new third-party tools. You're going to have to go out there and you're going to have to set this up. You're going to have to download a client. You're going to have to pay money. $15 a month is not an uncommon amount of money to pay for these. If it's free, you're an idiot to even try it. The amount of malware and evil stuff that goes on is unreal. You will pay. And there's a bunch of them out there. I am not going to recommend one to you because I know most of you guys are going to be using that because you like watching Letterkenny, but you can't get Letterkenny here in the United States because it's on Canoe TV, and you have to be a Canadian to watch it. You don't know what Letterkenny is? Are you kidding me? Are you serious? Oh my God. It's the funniest show you ever heard of. And it's only in Canada. Let's probably change that. So that's what this is all about. So when we're talking about these things you want so you can get free television or anonymize yourself, you're usually talking about open VPN proxies. And there's a bazillion of them out there. If you really want to, make sure you get one that doesn't do any logging. Guaranteed no logging is a big deal. You probably want to make sure the one that doesn't have a lot of United States laws. U.S. laws are a bit draconian in terms of what the government can do with FISA warrants and things like that. Trust me, if you're just trying to steal movies, nobody really cares other than the fact that you're taking away from people who make money based on royalties, you know. But make sure that they have enough nodes so that they can bounce their nodes around is an important thing. See which ones advertise speed. There's wonderful reviews out there, lots of reviews out there. And find the one that works for you. And God bless you. Okay. Let's see what we have for questions on this. First, you got to find where the live stream is because you have so many windows open. There, everybody is. All right. How are we doing on time? It's 3:30. Oh. Is anybody even listening to me right now? Or are we all trying to make history? Let me put the sound up just for a second.
The Dragon spacecraft, just waiting when we can get up there, open the hatch, and help them egress and come on back.
Oh no!
And the other thought I had, Dan and Jesse, is...
Help them egress and come on down. All right, no launch today. We can get back to work here. All right, let's deal with some questions. No launch. Launch was scrubbed. Why didn't anybody tell me the launch was scrubbed? Oh, lots of people did. Scrubbed due to weather. We'll find out when it gets relaunched. Hopefully it's tomorrow. Okay, so let's take a look here. Lots of questions. Oh, look, you guys were telling launch scrub all the time here. I was talking away. Check one. And lots of people told me the launch was scheduled. I was just going through my presentation. All right, I'm just looking for questions, guys. Westworld is on HBO Go? Okay, thank you. Alexander Alter Ego. I wonder who the primary ego is. What is your opinion about false advertisement VPNs use? They're all scumballs. It's a big problem. Most of the time, if you get a VPN, which we now know is a proxy server / VPN, or a VPN proxy server, you pay for it. And that gives you the security. Yeah, when they're putting ads and stuff in there, that means they're injecting into your stream, Alexander. That makes me nervous. They're going to relaunch this Saturday? Okay, hey, Melissa's there. Hey, Melissa. When's question about VPN? Right now. This is where we start asking VPN questions. Chris K. took the 901 and 902 a year ago and passed before that series was retired. Glad it's over. Yep, me too. Gus Gurr, Chrome seems to refer you to your system's proxy server and privacy and security. Yeah, I'm not a Chrome guy, so, but I knew that it would have somewhere in there. Alexander Alter Ego, does it cover how flawed the advertisement on VPNs are? Are you talking about a CompTIA exam? No. Javon Andian, always glad to see you, Mike. Thank you, sir. Alexander Alter Ego, will he answer questions, LOL? Yes, I will. Alexander, are you typing questions? C. Plaston, wait a sec. So I'm out on a job with my PC. Do I need to set up my VPN and use it if I'm on another network while on site? Yes, that's what VPNs are for, dude. That's why we do this, is because you're remote and you want to go back to your LAN. And you set up your VPN. Well, if you're the IT guy, somebody has to set up that endpoint like I just demoed. So somebody's got to set it up. Maybe you just got a new job and they've already got a VPN. Why would you go and set up something else up? And then you would have to set up the client as well. Yeah, here I am, Alexander. Thank you, Scott. I'm getting to him, man. Edward Floby. Hulu has Letterkenny. Actually, I knew that, Edward. Yeah. Matt H. Hi, Mike. Could you explain briefly what a modem is? I get it's to do with broadband. How are we doing on time? We got 30 minutes. Sure, Matt. Modem stands for modulator demodulator, and traditionally, modems predate the internet. The idea is that we could use an analog thing like a local telephone line to send digital signals, binary ones and zeros, which is what computers need. And that's where you would get into the old baud rates and stuff like that. I'm not sure how far I want to dive into that. So a modem was designed 1 billion years ago to connect to another modem. So you'd have two modems, and there was a regular analog phone line, which was designed by Ma Bell to do nothing but voice, okay? And then it would get the ones and zeros coming in, it would modulate them into an analog signal. The analog signal would get to the other modem, which would interpret it and put it back into a digital signal. That was the whole idea behind a modulator demodulator. But then we started to get into more of a digital age. And when we have truly digital connections, like I have Ethernet coming into my house on fiber optics and stuff like that, the box that you get that has fiber optic or a F-type connector on one end and an RJ45 coming out the other, it's really not a modem. I mean, it's really a terminal adapter, but we've got stuck with the term modem. We even say cable modem. It's not a modem, but you know. So we're kind of stuck with that. So I get it's to do with broadband. So really, to me, a terminal adapter is going to be a device, a bridge device that comes between, like on a cable modem, that would be DOCSIS to Ethernet. Or if you got, most fiber connections are not native Ethernet like mine. They're usually something called DSL to Ethernet. So they're a bridging device. But the word modem got stuck. It's not a modem. It's a terminal adapter. But everybody calls them a modem, and so will you and I. So Alexander, I feel that I've read yours. I hope I've answered them sufficiently, but if not, we've got plenty of time. Alexander, just retype them a little bit. Mike, if you use the built-in option to use ASUS websites, DDNS, does that make the VPN open to snooping from ASUS? No, not necessarily, TS, because the only thing the dynamic DNS is doing is giving the WAN IP address of your ASUS router a name. So ASUS would probably know that. Remember, it's a public IP address. The IP address on the WAN side of your router is public. You are not to hide it. You cannot hide it. It is impossible to hide it. You don't want to hide it. Dynamic DNS just gives it a DNS name, so that if it ever changes, the DNS name will always stay the same, and you won't have to sit there and try to figure out what your WAN IP address is. Remember, the WAN IP address, especially on SOHO routers, is DHCP. I know it's no big deal. We think about DHCP on our laptops and on our phones, but all of a sudden I got a router, and on the WAN side it's DHCP? Oh yeah, sure is. Yeah, and it can change. And that's why dynamic DNS exists. So you can give it a name like, mikesrouter.asuscom.com or something like that. So no matter what it gets changed to. The router will phone home to ASUS and inform ASUS whenever the update takes place, but that's the nature of dynamic DNS. We want that to happen, and any provider you used for dynamic DNS would do the same thing. But that doesn't mean that they can actually snoop in any ingoing or outgoing streams, especially if they're hidden in a VPN. C. Plasman 2009. So does my cell phone's VPN work through my router at home when I am out on a job using my PC? Does the VPN on your cell phone, and cell phones can have, I can put a VPN client on here. Android has them built in. It's easy peasy. Remember, it's still a computer. Whether it's a laptop or a smartphone, still a computer, still an operating system, still has an internet connection, all that's there. So let me read that question again, C. Plasman. So does my cell phone's VPN work through my router at home when I am out on a job using my PC? If you set it up that way, it did. Did you set up the VPN on your cell phone to talk to your router at home? Then yes, it will work that way. Did you set your VPN on your phone to talk to your router at work? Well, then it's going to talk to that. Or you can have two different settings. You can have it bounce back and forth between the two depending on what you want. Is that answering your question? The Jesus, why don't you like using Chrome? I don't like any Google products. I feel that Google is getting a little aggressive on their telemetry, and I don't want to be a part of that. Matt H. Hi, Mike. When do the 1000... you got about 2 years, Matt. It's so far in the future they haven't announced anything, so you got probably about 2 years. I just wanted to be certain, and to go out on repair jobs at, say, a Walgreens where they asked me to bring my PC and communicate with them, third-party Tier 2 help desk, and post notes for a job. Does that require a VPN? Okay. Alexander, this channel is great and you're doing it all for free for us. It's totally free. Completely free. Yeah, Alexander, yeah, the problem is I'm terrible at questions. I mean, I like questions, but the problem is I worry that people don't phrase their questions well. And to be honest with you, and I'm not saying you're doing this at all, I'm just saying that people can be a little lazy. And again, I'm not accusing you of that. So I often challenge people, develop your question a little bit more. I'm here to serve. Guard, what kind of performance issues does VPN raise? All of them. VPNs are terrible. They're slow. And so people make really dumb mistakes with VPNs sometimes, and it's a matter of proper configuration. Like, remember that where I was talking about when I was in Denver and I want to phone home to my company? So the moment I turn on the VPN, especially in the old days, that was my connection. That VPN connection was even my connection to the internet. So I'm sitting there in the Denver airport and I've got my VPN connected and I forgot that I had turned on my VPN. So I open up a web browser, right? And the web browser is so slow. I'm like, what's going on? I have a terrible connection here in Denver. No, what I'm doing in the old days is that connection would go through the VPN all the way back to the office, and it would use the office's default gateway, then go out to the internet, retrieve the web page, bring it all back to the office, back to the VPN. Most VPN solutions by default will have stuff like, look, if I'm not using an IP address that's on my local area network, then don't go through the VPN. Just use a regular, whatever wireless connection I'm on. Forget the tunnel. Just open up another session. So, yep, that can be a challenge. VPNs are very slow. Thomas Robinson, do you think they use modems for Apollo 11 and 69? Well, no. Sorry, buddy. So, no such thing as a do-it-yourself VPN? Well, sure, there's do-it-yourself VPNs. Robert Lewis, take a look at OpenVPN. In fact, OpenVPN is the tool that we at Total Seminars use. And don't confuse the fact that sometimes it's easy to turn stuff on that I've got everything right. So I'm just doing a quick demo on VPNs, and I just chose like that PPTP because it's so commonly seen in so many SOHO routers. But you can make it a lot more complicated and more robust. And absolutely do it yourself. You don't have to have you don't have to have a router at all. You can have, as an endpoint, you can have an open VPN server that's just inside your local area network. Now, go into the router and make sure you turn on VPN pass-through, so it will pass through VPN traffic to the right machine. But you absolutely can do this on your own, from stem to stern. OpenVPN has a built-in client. You don't use the Windows client with OpenVPN. OpenVPN comes with their own little client. You have to install it on any machine that wants to phone home. So to me, that's very do-it-yourself. Also, you seem to be so prolific. Ask Scott Jernigan about that right now. Do you have a life outside of instructing? Nope, I have no life. I am here to only serve you, Robert Lewis. I am here for you. No, I mean, seriously though, this is fun. I like this. I like technology. I miss my guys. That's the only real thing. The camaraderie of the nerds, hanging out together, and Michael Smyer, who's probably the most technical of all of us, getting off on some crazy tangent. And then Dave Rush, who's probably the most pragmatic of all of us, saying, you're nuts, And Scott Jernigan, who's like, the ethereal, the great thinker of our group, is like, is this important to know? And I'm just sitting in the corner, picking my nose. And it's like, we have a lot of fun at Total Seminars, man. The book is huge. I work really hard to write books that are readable. I hate big books that don't need to be, that aren't easy to read. Gringo. Mike, Gringo Espinado, I recently got a job at Amazon. Dude, it's soon to be AWS Center here in my city. I've been out of IT for 13 years. I'm a bit nervous. They still like my work history. Any advice? Gringo, act young. First of all, congratulations on the job. Well done, sir. The other thing is be fearless, but don't be an idiot. You know what I mean? Also remember that you're going to be entry level, so they're going to spoon feed you everything. Amazon's notorious for it. You know, be cool, and if you can't be cool, be quiet. You want to have a sense of being hip in IT. Are you a gamer? Do you know? Like, do you have a desktop system? If you're in IT and you have a desktop system, if you can't instantly quote the CPU, the video card, the type of RAM, and the amount that you have, and the model of motherboard, that would make me nervous. I'd be like, how could somebody be in IT and not know that? So, you know, just be comfortable. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know. Don't be afraid to say help. Do me a favor, Gringo. Is it really Gringo España? That's really your name? How could I miss this? I forgot what I was going to say. Not important. C++, I hotspot my PC using my cell. Okay. Hey, Mike, what's your go-to browser? Firefox. I love Firefox. And the other thing about Firefox is that Firefox was notorious for eating a lot of memory. Chrome is just as bad. Edge is just as bad now. So don't give me that old line. That's so 2010. Yeah, you did, Tom Jeffrey. You missed a good day. We were going through all my different Firefox add-ons. Even if you're on a VPN, you're not completely anonymous. Capital says this. Even if you're on a VPN, you're not completely anonymous. Sure, I'll agree with that. Capital, I mean, the problem is how interesting are you to people with big guns for them to make you unanonymous? Everything's crackable to some extent. But if everybody else has open doors and I'm the only person with a closed door on my block, no one's going to bother me because I'm, you know, unless I'm doing something that scares people. But I would challenge you, Capital, and say that carefully configured, a good VPN proxy would make you anonymous to all but the most highly skilled of people and the most highly determined of people. And if you're doing something that's so bad that you now have the attention of the most skilled and most determined of people, then I'm probably glad you're going to get caught. Sorry. And don't use the United States as a definer of the most skilled. I'm not going to name anything, but tell you, most of the law enforcement people I know their skills are not that great. So Tom Jeffrey's been using the new Edge browser. I will tell you, Tom, I have not actually tried the new Edge browser since it's got built on Chromium. I'm hearing good things about it, but you know, the thing is, I've got my Firefox all set up just right. I got my Firefox account, you know, I got all my synchronization syncing between my phone and my laptop and my desktop system and my home theater, because you know, I've got a very specific menuing bookmarks that I've got all menued up really pretty. I just like it. And I'm not motivated to change right now. C. Plasman. So, dude, you need to start just playing with some VPN setups. And the other thing is, don't go straight to open proxies. Just set up a classic VPN where you can get into your printer or to your cameras at the house. Or set up a reverse. You can actually do this. It's not that hard. And just play with it. And then when you want to get into open VPN, open proxy stuff, I mean, go for it. It's kind of a different animal, though. Dave Rush and I use Brave. I don't know what that is. Kelvin Tran, FlexVPN. FlexVPN is good. I've used it a few times. What is your opinion on the Information VPN store? I don't know what that is. Let me look it up real quick. VPNs store. It's one problem with, I don't like to use Google as a search engine. I use Start Page, which is still Google but stripped. VPN store, I found it. I know nothing of this, but it's got Surfshark, it's got Nord, a bunch of you I've never heard of. I'm not against this VPN store, but to be honest with you, I think check out some other review sites and you'll probably be more comfortable. So what is Brave? Super secure browser. God, man, every time, see, I think I know everything, and it's just like, slap. This is a complete browser I've never heard of. Is it based on something? Now I got to look this up too. And for the record, Scott Jernigan always likes weird browsers, and he's just Brave browser, free and open. It's a Chromium browser. Nah, I'm not changing. You guys be brave. Enjoy your browser. I'm happy. Matt H. Hi, Mike. Is the CompTIA online exam here to stay, or is it only during the pandemic? I can pretty much guarantee you it's here to stay. It really takes a lot of overhead off for a lot of things. I'm only worried if Prometric has a problem with it. Whoa, scrolled past all these questions. How are we doing on time? Oh, we only got a few more minutes. Karen Singh, oh my God, it's Mike Meyers. Oh my God. Hi, Karen. Welcome aboard. Joseph Fisher, by the way, I love your book. Thank you, Joseph. Alexander Alter Ego, I miss my students. Alexander, are you an instructor? Alexander, send me an email, please. Please, 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 please. If you, in fact, I don't care. Just send me an email. Anybody can send me an email, by the way. Use either one of these, it doesn't matter. Especially if you have more complicated questions. I'm always very interested in what you have to say. Also, keep in mind, we have, Alexander, if you're an instructor, we have some real big offers. That's why it's very important that you email me, and if you are an instructor, I'll get you in the right spot. Is the Edge browser still being beta tested? I don't know. Robinson, I miss dressing in anti-static bags in the 80s. Capital, what's a good website or your suggestions on learning subnetting? Capital, we did a big thing on subnetting. Was that last week, guys? I think I do an excellent instruction on subnetting, and it's right here. It's you'll see one of the AMAs that says subnetting. I'd recommend starting there. Great place. Is everyone on YouTube here? Yes, everyone on YouTube is here. Every single one of them. Whoa. Philippe Carmona, subnetting for Friday. No, Philippe, we've done it. Just go grab one of the, was it last week or? Yeah, no, I've got a good subnetting. The thing is, watch the subnetting AMA, and if you have questions, bring them on back in here. That's what we're here for. We answer any kind of question there is. Like this Friday, what did I promise to do? I forgot already. Oh, manage switches and VLANs. Okay, so like I've got this topic that we'll do for Friday. So it takes me about maybe an hour to prep, 2 hours to prep, and then I'll have about a 30-minute presentation on it. But then this is an Ask Mike Anything. You ask any question you want. I count on you guys to ask those questions for you. So anyway, Alice, same thing. You guys, I already did a wonderful subnetting AMA just like last week. Go ahead and watch it and then come back with questions. I'll be glad to double check on anything. Alexander, Alter Ego, when are you going to do command prompt? We did a big chunk of command prompt, but we can do more if you guys want. But you're going to have to ask questions on command prompt. You're going to ask me, Mike, show me how to do chmod. Mike, show me how to use net command. You know what I mean? I'll do individual commands, or pick 4 or 5 and then hit them with me one at a time. Better yet, pick 4 or 5, send me an email with the 4 or 5 you want me to cover, and then I'll cover them. And that's the best way to do this, Alexander. I am here for you, man. And unfortunately, it is already 4 o'clock, so we have got to go. Folks, remember, we've got for today, we've got, I forgot what it is. Scott Jernigan, can you put it up one more time? The deal that we have for today for discount something or another. And Brent White, is there any site to use to do the practical questions? Yeah, Brent, sorry, brother, but we sell simulations. They're dirt cheap. We give incredibly low prices here. We're always giving out huge discounts. Check them out. That would be the best place to get simulations. I'm very proud of our simulations, and I really think that's the best route you can go. We're talking 2 figures cost, and that'll do it for you. Kids, it is 4 o'clock. It is time to go. So we will be back on Friday. We will be covering any questions that you have via email or ones that you put into the live chat. Otherwise, the big part of the day is going to be the concept of managed switches and VLANs, and then we're going to see where we go from there. So, guys, I apologize if I missed a question. I try not to miss any. Just come back on Friday and ask again. Until then, this is your Uncle Mike saying good night.